Michael Gawenda, thank you very much for accepting to give us an interview.
It's a pleasure.
We want to have a talk about two things. First, you manage the OSUD media project.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a bit more about that so our audience can know what the project is about.
Well, it's a grant that we received from the Australian Research Council, a linkage grant that we got with our partners, the ABC and AIMS. The goal of the project is to do two things: to research the media treatment of Sudanese Australians in the Australian media over the last 10 years, to examine its strengths and weaknesses, to detail its characteristics, and on the other part of the project is to train Sudanese people, Sudanese Australians, in media so that they can develop their own journalism and their own voice. So to that end, the project started with a pilot training in 2010. We had an 8-week training in basic journalism for Sudanese people. We had 12 graduates of that pilot. Then we had one longer training session last year that went for 12 weeks. We've had 2 this year, one that we've already had and one that we're doing at the moment. The goal is to build a website that will be interactive, that will have all the features of a proper news website run by our trainees, the graduates. We have probably now had 35 people have gone through the training. They are writing on a blog at the moment that is called Australian Sudanese Voices. And we hope that by early next year, by May, say next year, we will have built the website. We're in the process of designing it and building it. So we're doing two things. One is researching how the Sudanese community has been portrayed in the Australian media, and the other is training Sudanese people to have their own voice in journalism. The two interconnect because the training has all been carried out by journalists, a range of different journalists from different organisations. So they come in contact with Sudanese people. They understand a bit more about who they're covering when they go and write stories. The Sudanese Australians understand better how the media operates. Relationships have been formed.
And what have you found so far with regards to the research side of the project?
Well, I'd have to say that at this stage what we found early on was that most of the coverage, a lot of the coverage has been superficial, has focused on negatives about the community, has had very little, in the reporting anyway, understanding by the reporters of the challenges and the culture of the community that they're covering. And often it focused on things like violence, almost overwhelmingly on events like that, whether there are gangs, whether there is violence, but very little about the challenges facing this community. I think there's been some improvement from when we started looking at it. If we go back to 2007-8, there was that, I forgot what year it was, that the then Immigration Minister, Kevin Andrews, said that we have to stop taking Sudanese people because they come from a culture of violence. Well, that was a terrible time and a terrible thing to say. The media reported it without actually examining it. It had a big impact on people's lives. I think there's been a change since then. I'm not saying things are magnificent, but they have changed. There's a greater understanding, I think, of that community.
And what do you think has caused that change?
Well, I think, I don't want to take total credit for the OSUD project, but it's had some impact because some of the people that have written stories and broadcast stories have been people who have trained, who have been involved in our training project. some of the stories that have been written about this community, about the Sudanese community in particular, have been written by journalists who found their stories by being involved in the project. Mm. They're more positive, they're more nuanced, they're better stories. Mm. The other thing that's happened is that we have developed, it wasn't a goal of the project, but for the media, we have developed a group of people who are able to talk for their community. Mm-hmm. So the journalists know who to come to for comment, for background, for information. And that's made a difference, that's made a big difference too. I also think that gradually those people covering this area have deepened their reporting because of complaints, because there have been complaints about how they have operated and the sort of stories they've done. I still think that there is negative reporting that is not contextualised in any way. And the best example recently was the example of the Deputy Commissioner coming out and actually talking about Sudanese and Somali crime.
We'll get to that in just a moment. With regards to that change that you are talking about, do you actually think that now the press or journalists in general have a better understanding of how the impact of their reporting, how their reporting is significantly impacting on the lives of communities in Australia?
There's not enough understanding, but there's greater understanding than there was 4 or 5 years ago. I think that's true. I think that most journalists don't think about the impact they're going to have. They're on to the next story. They don't, but they ought to be thinking about it. Yeah. And so I think there is now increased understanding. It's not perfect, far from perfect, that if they write shallow, non-contextualised stories, they have an impact on people's lives, a direct impact. I mean, many Sudanese struggled with finding work, even getting interviews for jobs.
Even when they're qualified.
Even when they're qualified. And part of that is due to the reporting. Mm-hmm. So it has an impact. It's important that they understand that. I think there is increasing understanding, but there's a lot more work to do. Can I just explain that we focused on the Sudanese because we thought we had to start with one community. They were the biggest African community, certainly in Melbourne. I think that's true in Australia-wide. Mm-hmm. And we hope that what we learnt with this community could be passed on to other communities. And there are projects like yours that are now starting to do different but similar type things. So I'm hopeful that we're in the process of contributing to a better understanding and better journalism about not these communities, but all communities.
And that leads me to a question that I was going to ask you anyway, with regards to why the project was only for Sudanese and why it has not evolved and opened up to others, given that it's been run for at least 2 years or so.
Well, the reason is that it's a 3-year ARC-funded research project. And in our application for the funding, we said that for the first 3 years we'd focus on the Sudanese community. And frankly, I think it was the right thing to do. We couldn't have done it with the sort of depth that did it if we opened it up. We wanted to do everything we could to make sure that we trained as many Sudanese people as possible to make a difference. And if that worked, and I think it has worked, we will open it up to other communities.
So are you hopeful that the project will continue for a while, because the funding may stop and you were not able to continue further?
Well, the funding runs out at the end of next year, but I am absolutely hopeful that we will get further funding. And if we don't, others will, you included, Clyde.
Well, I hope I can.
To continue that sort of work. Yes, I don't think I don't think for a moment this work's going to finish at the end of 2013. No,
absolutely, because the problem is quite deep, and the community, the impact on the community is so huge that this is an area that needs to really continue to be worked on for quite a while. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're just beginning. We're just beginning this work, and it was never the thought in my mind or my fellow researchers' mind that 3 years we'll fix this all up and move on. No, not at all. I think this is just the start, and this is a long project and a long process, because a lot of the problems are entrenched, and to change them takes time and effort.
With regards to the students, how have they been faring? What is the most positive thing, or what's the thing with the most impact that has happened for students in their development in this area?
Well, I'd say two things. First, I've been incredibly impressed by the commitment that they've made. They've had to come every Saturday. The first ones were on Friday, but now they're on Saturday. They come every Saturday. They have to be there from 10 till 5. They're incredibly enthusiastic. They do the work that has been set for them. They have been incredibly determined to learn, to get across the issues. They want to be good at this. And I think that if you measured their progress, it's been remarkable. I mean, I think some of them are capable of being journalists in the mainstream. And I would hope some of the outcomes will be that. I mean, for some of them, there's already been outcomes. Some of them are working at the ABC. They haven't got full-time jobs, but they have casual work at the ABC. One of them I know has a book contract to write a book about some of the issues that we're dealing with. So I am very hopeful and very impressed by what they've been able to achieve and what they've been able to do. A lot of that is on a blog, the OSUD blog. You can read their work. I think it's outstanding. Some of them have had articles published in The Age, on the drum for the ABC and elsewhere, in local papers. So I think they're making real progress. And I think the journalists who have been involved in training have learned an incredible amount. I have. Friendships have been made, as you can imagine. And those friendships will survive, I believe, past this project. So it's been incredibly positive.
Okay, having the skills through the training is one thing. Getting the job, for those at least who want to continue to the job, is another. And there's the bigger problem that you touched on a little bit about employment. Even these students get the training and they're good enough. Do you think it's going to be easy for them to actually get to work, because that's how they will continue to get better and be useful in the whole process that they've been trained for? No,
I don't think it'll be easy. It's not easy to get jobs in journalism for anybody at the moment. I mean, the journalism is in crisis. So it's not easy. And the goal of the project was never to produce journalists that would be able to get jobs in the mainstream media. The goal was to give people enough training so that they could do journalism, and that they could build this website and we could get it going. And then there will be the issue of funding. How will it be funded? And how will it be maintained? Now, those issues have to be addressed, and we're going to address them.
And do you think maybe there could be some scope for even some subsidized employment opportunities, just to make sure that those, because the skills, for whatever thing, if you don't get to practice them, you may lose them, even though a little bit of that may stay. Given that many of them come from non-journalistic background, if they don't continue to use those skills, even on some sort of format, they may lose much of what they've learned.
Well, for some of them, there will be opportunities, not for all of them. But I think they can maintain some involvement, keep improving their skills. They've all got mentors who are journalists. Each one has got an individual mentor. And so they can continue to increase their skills. I want them, I hope, and they want to use the website to write and to do video and to do audio and And I hope we can work out ways of funding that. What I can't do, Clyde, and what we have made clear we can't do, I can't guarantee jobs. I cannot do that. I can't guarantee jobs for anybody.
All right, no, that's well understandable.